This episode of Wave Files is brought to you by Deluxe Candles. Make sure to visit shopdeluxeonline.com for your luxury candle needs. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Wave Files. Of course, my name is Reg West. On today's podcast, I have a good friend of mine that is, how can I describe him in the best way? He's a wordsmith. That's it. He's just a wordsmith. He puts words together. Sometimes you see them on Twitter. Sometimes you see them on Instagram. You might have seen him actually in a TED Talk. This is how important he is. He had his own TED Talk. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to hold y'all any longer. I want to introduce y'all to a friend of mine who I hold highly with the words. This is my guy, Joel Leon. How are you, sir?
Reg, much love to you, brother. It's good. It's good to hear your voice. Good to see your face, man. I'm blessed. A little tired, but blessed, man. Blessed for sure.
This is adulthood. We've known each other since our 20s when we were young and able to not sleep for 2 days straight. That's not happening anymore.
Not at all. Like I don't even know what we were doing. Like how do you even do that? Like how did your body?
How do you do that now, right?
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Like I wish I had.
Oh my goodness. So like I said in the intro, you have some amazing accolades that you've accomplished over the tenure of your artistic career. But
thank you, bro. Thank
you. You most recently have gotten a lot of notoriety because of one of your tweets. You tweet some amazing, eloquent words that people look to for inspiration, as well as your TED Talk that you did in 2020, which also gained a lot of notoriety. But before we talk about those amazing things, I want to talk about how we met back in the day. Before you were Joel Leon, you were Mag. You was the guy Mag, a rapper from the Bronx who was spitting. Yo, how do we meet exactly? Was it at a showcase?
I will tell you, I think it's one of two ways. I mean, first of all, shout out to Jay Hatch, because I think it started with me doing those underground showcases at like those Jay Hatch venues, but I think it might have been through Sky. I feel
Sky
like
Zoo.
It might have been, I think it might have been a Sky Zoo event that I either was at or you were at. Either way, I think it was one of those two. It might have been all three. It might have been a Jay Hatch event where Sky was there, because
everything all mixed together, right?
Yeah, because like at the time, like I was really running heavy with Coalescence. So Tor Vega.
Yep.
Yeah. So shout out to Tor Ray, DJ Vega Benaton.
Vega,
but I was running, and Kill,
my man Vega.
And Kill Ripken. Shout out to them. But I was doing a lot of like running around with them, and that's because I would do the showcases. They were there, and I feel like I through that, but like and he was just a cool ass dude who also could DJ his ass off. So that was a good time, man. Like that I was just telling my lady, I do miss that. I miss those days a little bit. Like not even on there's just something about the energy of hip hop, I think, at that time, where like at this point the blogs are really heavy and hot. And so like going being independent and not necessarily needing a label, where you could just, if you had the right connect at the blog spot, like your record was going to go where it needed to go. And if you ran with the right folks, then like, your music was going to go where it needed to go. It was just about being out there and being seen, man. It was a good time. It was a good time.
We spoke about this on the phone the other day, but I need to say this on the record. I still have some of your songs in my phone that play on shuffle, and I don't skip.
Man, that means so much to me, man. Reg, it do.
Yo, because like I told you, like I make sure I put those songs in the phone. Like there's no Like I have Title. I'm not that much of a dinosaur. I have Title. I have a subscription, but I
Yeah,
also put songs in my phone. I'm a DJ. I like to control
yeah,
my own
yeah,
situation. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like
Yeah,
nowadays, there's no, I guess, checks and balances anymore, right? Like
yeah,
you
yeah.
can be you can be a DJ, you can be a rapper without any real assistance. Everything is at your accessible, right? Like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can record your music in your bedroom, put up on SoundCloud, and you're a rapper now. You
yeah.
don't have to go to the studio. You don't
Nope.
have to press up vinyl. You don't even have to press
No,
up CDs
no,
anymore.
no,
Like
nah.
everything is digital. Nothing's tangible.
Yeah,
So and very similar with with being a DJ.
yeah.
You can literally go buy a inexpensive $100 $200 piece of equipment, plug it
Mm,
up to your computer,
yep.
and play the songs that you have, and you're a DJ now.
Yeah.
There's no carrying crates for the local hot DJ and getting
Hmm.
your name up,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and for the rapper portion, you don't really have to go do showcases
Nah.
anymore to get your
Nah.
recognition.
Nah.
You stay in your bedroom.
Hmm.
You know
Basically.
what I mean?
Yeah. 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 Your basement or whatever, your laundromat, whatever it is you use it to
Your
record.
laundry at work.
You know what I
But
mean? But like,
hold on, but
yeah, yeah,
is that us being dinosaurs in a sense of like these young kids don't know what they're talking about because our
yeah.
parents previously had other struggles, right? Like
Yep.
the previous generations had different struggles.
Yeah.
So is that us being dinosaurs and saying y'all don't know what you had to deal with back in my
Yeah.
day? Da, 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 da,
Yeah.
da.
Yeah. I think it's that, but I think it's both. And I think there's room for both to be true. You know what I'm saying? Like we again, like no one like when I was like rapping and like when we would be doing shows or whatever, like I'd be sometimes it'd be 2 o'clock in the morning, especially if you're doing a hip hop showcase at the time, right? Like you had this long ass bill, especially for like a J Hat show, right? And for like
Mhm.
those who might be listening, like this might be a familiar like guardrail for you, like when they were coming up at that time. But like you were given a set amount of tickets, you sell those tickets, that's gonna get you entry to perform. You perform for maybe 10 minutes, you get like 3 songs or whatever. There might be 15 other dudes on the bill, there might be judges on that bill. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to like Amadeus. Amadeus used to be a judge. I used to show up for all those J Hat shows. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like you and then you may not be on until like 2 o'clock in the morning. When you on at 2 o'clock in the morning, you gotta hope that your people that came with you was still there. Because if not, you performing to like in front of 3 people in the room. Like I remember doing shows where it'd be like literally it
Yeah.
might be Torre, it might be you, and it might be the bartender and like 3, 5 other people, stragglers, and like that'll be it. And so like not having to go through that process, I think it takes something away from the process of like honing your craft. And every to your point, Reg, every generation has that. Yeah, like, you know, when you think about like the old school jazz heads who heard bebop and was like, this is sounds different. The way you're making the art sounds different. You know, like when we went from tapes to Pro Tools and how engineers was probably like, yo, this is ridiculous. Like you're losing the quality of the sound, which is true if
Facts.
we're being, you know, if we're being honest, you know what I'm
Being
saying?
honest,
But
right?
like, you know, but at the end of the day, I think there's something to be said about having to cut your teeth, hold like carrying crates for the DJ and who's popping at the time, and you just trying to get started. Like I learned how the reason I'm able to give a TED talk is because I know how to speak in front of people and not just speak but perform, you know, and that came from me having to do it like every single month, 2 to 3 times a month, performing in front of people who didn't know me, who didn't give a shit about my music, who probably would be like you performing in front of people who are walking away while you rapping. Like
Literally, no, no, literally walking away.
yeah, like nah, I'm good. You know, like they call your name and everyone goes to the bar because no one cares who you are. Like that's the era we come from. And so I think it makes a different kind of character. And I think also too, there's no gatekeepers. And as much as I appreciate the process of like, yo, I could at that point in time, like you could just cut a record, even especially now, you could just cut a record and just put it on YouTube. You know what I'm saying? Or cut a record and just throw it in your Bandcamp. You know, you can sign up to TuneCore and get your music through Spotify. But like you had to, I remember when I did the Reaganomics project and like we were trying to get the CD to Hot 97. Like
Right.
it was like you had to do that. Like you had to know somebody. Like that was important. Now it doesn't, it's a whole different ball game, and I think it's a different era. But I feel like that era produced the quality of not just music, but the person who made the music as well. You know?
Right, because even though, to your point, I think the gatekeeper thing is a gift and a curse, right? Because
Yeah,
you, on one end, you were able to sift through the bullshit,
yeah,
like
absolutely.
you know. But on the other on the flip side of that, if you didn't have those relationships, you couldn't even get through the
Mm-hmm.
door. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I appreciate the floodgates being open, so kids can kind of just do what they do. But at the same
yeah,
time, there needs to be some checks and balances, and
yeah,
the ability to learn, through experiences of physically being, like you said, yo, I'm on at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's the bartender, it's the judges, and the DJ who's ready to go home. That's
yeah,
it. That's it.
yeah.
If you
Word,
don't learn
word.
through those experiences, how can you get better? Right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I remember R.I.P. Southpaw, but like being at Southpaw, being at SOBs, you know what I'm saying? Remedy Lounge. I remember the first time I saw Ryan Leslie perform. I think it was at Remedy Lounge, and like I would. There's just so many places that have closed that like I think were the breeding ground for a lot of cats coming up
Right,
in
right,
like that early 2000 period,
right.
But like that teaches you something, whether that's something that gets to live in the music or whether you decide to leave music and do other stuff. I think there's something about having to endure that kind of struggle that prepares you for other things, that I think unfortunately folks are missing out on, and I don't know how we have checks and balances. It's so hard to kind of, I don't think we'll ever be able to go back, but
Now,
a part of me yeah, I miss it to a certain extent because like you said, like you can sift through. There were people who could sift through things. Granted, sometimes they were picking things that a lot of that is subjectivity too. Like
facts.
if my, what I'm saying, like I'm sifting through the bullshit, but the bullshit, even if it's my man's and it's bullshit, he's gonna get the green light because it's my
It's
man's
my
and
man.
we gonna put him on, But I think, like you said, man, there's a good and there's a bad to it. You take both and see where you end up, I guess.
Speaking of seeing where you end up, you moved from rapping to, I mean, I'm speedballing a little bit, but
Yeah, yeah,
like I so we kind of lost touch for a minute. Like after
yeah,
the rap game, I know you moved, and
yeah,
like all of a sudden I see you on social media making posts and doing the tweets, and
yeah.
I'm like, yo, these are some very great affirmations. Like, let me retweet this. And
Thank
then
you,
we,
sir.
we got back in contact, and we became
Yeah,
like like we never like, I'll put you like this, and you know this about me. If I don't see you for 10 years, we act like I saw you last week. It's the
yeah, for
same energy.
sure. Yeah,
You know what I'm
same
saying?
energy. Yeah,
Um, and I see you with these tweets out here, but it's not just me liking these tweets. It's like 30,000 other people liking these tweets. Like, I'm
yeah.
like, yo, hold up. My man got 50,000 followers. What's going on now?
How did that happen?
How did
Yeah,
that happen? So,
yeah,
yo,
yeah.
talk to me about your transition from being Mag the rapper to where you are now.
I think part of the reason why I was excited to have this conversation with you, Reg, not just because like, you're just a good ass dude. I think it's very rare that people know, like outside of like, and I told you, like my brother is probably the only other person that still calls me Mag, like
Yeah,
literally, like there are not too many other people who know what I don't want to say used to do, but how heavy I was doing what I was trying to do at that time as far as hip hop was concerned. And the transition really, it came, I want to say right around the time I turned 30. Like I can give you the date, like we're talking like 2014, 2015. Actually, no, wait, I'm bugging. It's before that. We're talking 2012, 2013.
hmm,
Because by that time, I just ended my long term relationship with my then partner. I'm here in New York. I've been back in New York for like about 5 years or so. I was about to turn 30, and I was kind of going through transition period, and like Twitter became my journal. Granted, it wasn't personal. I wasn't like tweeting like, "Yo, my cat died." Someone, it wasn't, it wasn't nothing like nothing
right,
wild like that. But it was like I was tweeting a lot of poems at the time while also being like these blogs ain't really checking for me. Like I don't have the end to like be like, okay, Two Dope Boys is gonna post me because, you know what I'm saying, I know Shake or whoever. Like I didn't have that connect. So for me it was very grassroots, like person by person, trying to build a platform for people to kind of just get the music and art out there. And then what wound up happening was I started, I mean, honestly, I started gravitating towards Buddhism, and I had been doing a lot of reading, and a lot of that reading was really kind of bringing me back to self and like, okay, I'm a black man in America. I'm finding the language to describe the things that I'm sifting through in my own spirit and my heart. How do I communicate that in a way that's going to be relevant to my audience? And at that time, we're talking like 2013 or whatever. I maybe had like 5,000 followers on Twitter. And and I was telling you, Rez, like around that time, like 2013, I'm still putting on music. 2015 comes around, the Ferguson uprisings happen, and I find out I'm having my first child. I start making a pivot, really, and I always say pivot because I'd always been writing, but it was like I needed to find a way to encapsulate everything that I was feeling about being a first time dad in a situation that I don't think was very healthy, for myself or my co-parent. But at the same time, Ferguson is happening. It was like, yo, I need to essays became the way for me to kind of um, better have a better grasp of whatever I was going through. Medium.com at that time became they opened up their platform because like a lot of people don't know is Medium at one point when you would try to post a blog with say Medium.com, you couldn't do it via your phone. So it's a really weird story, but it's important. But like when I was at there's another job that I had. I used to do my Joelle work at that office because like I had mad free time, and then Medium.com was they had like a firewall, so I couldn't do no writing at work, and that was like fucking me up. And then it was just like, yo, I couldn't do no writing. But then once they opened, so I hadn't been writing for like a year, and then when they opened it up so you could post on your phone, that's when I started writing poems and putting them on Medium.com. And then I had a piece called "Don't Be a Fuck Boy" that I essentially had written after someone had made like a really like crude comment to my co-parent at the time, like while she was at her job, like while she was pregnant, said something real reckless to her. And that I wrote that thing in like maybe less than like 2 hours. And it wasn't even really an essay. It was like a listicle that went viral. Like that got a shit ton of attention. Like Huffington Post picked it up. There was a whole lot of conversation around that. And I think that's really what started me really making that big transition because right around the time, I don't think anybody else, they, I started writing in a really, I think, pivotal moment for Black literaries and Black creatives, especially because we hadn't seen anything like Ferguson up until Ferguson. I mean, maybe until like the civil rights movement of the 60s, when we saw this Black uprising happening. And there was a crop of Black writers who were really writing about that in mass. And I was one of them. And that I think kind of ushered me into this newfound territory of viewership and readership. And then that kind of coupled with me tweeting affirmations, that kind of really became the big thing. And then and it wasn't until last year that really became part of what I was doing on Instagram. Instagram became like a case study for me. Like I was just trying to make art. Everything that I've been doing, man, is me trying to find a way to make art, and make art in a way that feels relevant to me first and foremost. And that's kind of allowed me to do a whole bunch of other shit that I'm extremely proud of.
Well, yes, and I do know because I've seen these things.
It's been wild, man. It's been wild.
Like for example, I know you speak at different institutions. Didn't you speak at Columbia University? And
I did. I spoke at Columbia University. I actually hosted a workshop there, a drama, a theatrical drama and poetry workshop with my very good friend Carla Stockton. It was part of a series she was doing where she'd be teaching international students over the summer. So I would go in there and like help. I would lead them through like a kind of like a poetry exercise, share some of my work, have them share some of their own work, give critiques, feedback. Carla Stockton played a really big part in me kind of leaning into doing more speaking and not just speaking like Joel's performing a poem, but like, okay, let's facilitate a workshop and help students learn the art of literature, but also bringing hip hop into that conversation, which was really important for me, which is why she brought me in the first place. But that led to me doing work for the Gates Foundation and, like the stuff that's been happening has really been, a lot of it just, it's been through hip hop. If I'm being transparent, like the way that I show up in the world is very much steeped in me being from the Bronx and me having the opportunity to share my craft with the world. Like Twitter's just, I think, as much as it feels like a bigger platform, it's a very small microcosm of what I do. I think a lot of what I really do is the shit that you saw me doing. You know, it's like the hustle of being on stage performing and giving of myself for the art and for the culture. Like that's really what like even the affirmations, that's what it's really about. You know, that's what my bio was like. I tell stories to Black people, you know, because it depends on what the story is. If it's going to be a rap, if it's going to be a poem, if it's going to be a theatrical piece, if it's going to be me facilitating a workshop, me speaking at TED, it's all about our community first and foremost, and how I can best uplift us and be of service to us in that way, you know?
Let's talk about the TED Talk for a second, because I know full transparency, people, like me and Joel had a conversation, and I was like, "Yo, you made it the TED Talk." He was like, "Yeah." They hit me. I was like, "Yo, they want, like, I'm gonna talk about this," but they told me to talk about this, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Okay, I'll talk about that. Sure, no problem."
Yeah.
Can can
Basically.
can you talk about the process of making it to TED Talk, and
Yeah.
what your, I guess, anticipation for it was, and how did you prep for that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question, Reg. I think I was, Ted had been, I'll try to, I don't want to make this too long. Like Ted had been on like my vision board for years. And so Ted has this thing called TED Fellows where, and I didn't know this at the time, but like you apply to be a TED Fellow with an opportunity to actually talk on the official TED stage. And
Mm,
because like they have a TED Talk, the TED stage that happens, the big TED stage that happens every year in February. I spoke at the TED Women's Conference, which is like the second biggest stage. If it like, because sometimes people tend to like they swap TED for TEDx, and no offense to folks who have given a TEDx talk, those are two completely different worlds. Like
mm,
there's like a Wakefield in the Bronx has a TEDx stage where you can apply and then you can give a talk. No one, like there's no editors to work with you. There's none of that. Like when you're speaking at TED or TED Women's Conference, it's a big fucking deal. Like they flew me out to California. Like I was there for like a week roughly. And there's rehearsals involved. There's a lot in the process, and you don't apply to be a TED speaker. Like TED finds you, and then they make the
mm.
decision of whether or not, like, and they'll tell you what you want to speak to. So Helen Walters, shout out to Helen. Helen had been following me on Twitter. She reached out to me. I remember this because Bria, my partner, and I, we were coming back from an ultrasound, and I was just on Twitter and I looked at my mentions and it was like, "Hey Joel, Helen from TED would love for you to give a TED talk." And I started dancing in the street, B. I started like doing the robot. I was in the street like, oh, 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 oh,
You
oh.
stop knocking in the street, dog.
Yeah, bro. Like cause cause like Rick, cause like a TED talk can change your life, you know, like because what it does is it creates a platform for other people to see you, you know, and globally. Like my TED talk right now is at like 1.4 million views, and like those, bruh, like those numbers happened. Like I remember when I was counting down because I think when I hit 100,000, it was like I think that was in a day, and it's like, yo, this is the most attention I've gotten for any of the years that I was doing rap, that I was doing acting, none of that. Like and it's like a calling card, you know. But the process of it was when Helen reached out, I was like, yo, I want to do this talk about art and culture and how it saved my life. And Helen was like, nah, that's cool. I've been following you because great, thanks. I've been following you because you've been so eloquent when talking about being a father and what that means to you. And I've been doing a lot of writing, especially before my first daughter Lila was born, about me being a dad. Writing I'm very proud of, and I think she had caught wind of that, and so she's like, she wanted me to talk about being a father. And like what I was telling you was, I felt like a bigger conversation really was to talk about co-parenting, because I hadn't seen anybody talk about it, and not talk about it in a way where it's like, okay, we're divorced, now we have to figure out what to do, or we're separated, or it's like, nah, I mean, you know, not for nothing, some hood shit where it's like, yo, I meet a shorty, I like her, she likes me, now she's pregnant, and now we have to figure it out.
Right.
There's no books or there's movies for that. There's some Lifetime movies, there's some BET movies, but it's not a conversation because it's a very complex, nuanced conversation about how do you raise a child with the person you're not in love with. You
Right.
know, and we're the best of friends now, but we went through a very shitty, toxic process for both of us. And I felt like it was an opportunity for me as a black man to talk about the importance of showing up as a co-parent and what co-parenting means outside of just two people in the same household. Like, you get to co-parent even if you are not actually the parent of said child. Like, I think guardians get to be co-parents, teachers get to be co-parents. Like, who is showing up in that role as a person that's sharing the responsibilities of raising and rearing a human being. And me being able to give a talk to that was very important for me because I wrote the talk, Helen edited the talk with me, but I got to, you know, it for me it was like I got to mention the names of dudes who I grew up with, who I knew were fathers, who were black fathers. You know, I got to mention my man Buck, who had passed away. I got to wear a blue bandana in my breast pocket because like I wanted to shout out Nipsey Hussle. Like, for
Mm.
me, the importance of like, yo, I get to bring hip hop into this space. It was like important to me. And so like I think that's what I most looked forward to. But the process was just it was nerve wracking, but it was incredible. It was honestly, man, like just being there, being surrounded by such wonderful energy and folks who are really doing some amazing things in the world, was everything for sure.
So with that, you feel like your profile has been raised, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think it even now for me, you know, I don't have a manager. I mean, I have an agent, but I have a literary agent, you know, and like they're working with me in my essay collection, but I don't have a person who's like getting me gigs. Like, the all of 2020, Reg, was just people finding my work and reaching out. And I think a lot of that had to do with TED, even if it didn't matter what the TED talk was. It's like being able to say you gave a TED talk it's a stamp, it's a seal of approval in and of
Yeah.
itself. It allows me to raise my rates a little bit.
Facts.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, you want me to talk? Like,
What we talking
I'm
about?
just, yeah, exactly. Like, how much is this bag? You know, like, let's be honest. You know, but yeah, it definitely raised the profile for me for sure.
But to be honest with you, it kind of goes back to our conversation about music, right? Like with gatekeepers
Mm,
and things of that nature. If we didn't have this social media platform, you
hmm.
wouldn't have gotten noticed, right?
No, no,
So
that's
so
yeah,
so so this goes back to the gift and the curse of what we talked about with music.
yeah, yeah.
You wouldn't have got that notoriety from the follows of people from TED Talk or
Hmm.
even Lin Manuel, which we'll get into in a minute too, from
Yeah,
people that that notice you because of this open wide platform. It's not
yeah,
gated anymore,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And I mean, absolutely, Reg. And I think about you when I think about the MySpace era, how important that was. Like,
It was
you
so
know,
important to be in your top eight, right? Gotta be in that top eight. You know what I'm saying?
I feel like you was in my top 8 for a little bit too.
I probably
I feel
was.
like you,
I was
Reg,
probably up there. Yeah.
Tor was probably in there. Like, you know, but like that there were a lot of connections I made in that time. Like, even, you know, for I performed, you know, I may not have been out in the front for a lot of people, but I was performing with a band for a while. My homies, the Melting Pot crew, and I met them through MySpace. And even Arthur Lewis, I was the best man at his wedding. Arthur Lewis and I, we are performing and doing music, and that Arthur's my connection to Lin Manuel. But I met Arthur through MySpace. You know what I'm saying? Like John Brayman, who was one of the leaders of the Melting Pot crew, which became my band, our band. John is like the godfather to my first child. Like,
Mhm.
you know, like that happened through social media. The fact that we were able to even reconnect, that's, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's social media, like bringing people together. You know, I think we see the adverse reaction to that when we look at, you know, Trump needing to be suspended and all this other stuff. Like, there's a very dark side to it. But I think when it's done right, like, social media saved and changed my life, bro. Like, I don't know what I would be doing. I would be making music, but I feel like if I'm being completely honest, I'd probably be a dude who was still trying to do shows, and no knock to any dude or woman, whomever, who's still trying to do shows at like 38, 40. But that I probably would have been the dude who maybe was still in the hood trying to figure out a way, still making art and being proud of it, but not being sure where to go. Like, I was able to latch on to something because, again, the gatekeepers didn't care who I was. They didn't know me. I didn't have a connect. I didn't have an in. So I had to make an in. Social media allowed me to make an in and like create a platform for myself, you know, that people now look for when it comes to inspiration, which is amazing to me. But I would have never predicted any of that. But I think that was all predicated on me being active and taking responsibility of my career and using social media as a means to do that.
No, that's right. Because you might not be able to get through the velvet rope, but your networking game online is something different, right? Because
Exactly.
and I think that's what is so important now. Like it's so I shouldn't say it's so easy because it's not, but it's different now
Yeah, for
to
sure.
you know what I'm saying? Like the ability to find someone in Ohio that you might not have never known
Hmm.
that enjoys what you do. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like it's just different.
Yeah,
Um,
and people are accessible. Like you can, when I remember when Ava DuVernay followed me on Twitter and
mm,
and being like, this is wild. Like, or like people would see Lynn and myself having exchanges on Twitter. Like Lynn could retweet me 4 times and like that would grow, I would gain like maybe 3,000 followers just because of that. Like it, but I think part of that's the strength of social media. It's being able, and that still though goes back to when you talk about the network, and I like to use the term village building, like, and I consider you a part of my village, where it's like there are folks who I met, whether they know it or not, affected like how I showed up in the world and helped how I showed up in the world. Like if I could, if I get into a Reg West party, what I'm saying, for Reg West birthday, what I'm saying, because that was an extravaganza back in the day,
oh,
like,
that was an experience. Yes, sir.
yeah, man. Like there were times, and I remember times you dropping me off at the train station, and like, you know, I mean, not, again, like how great and amazing a human you are, but I also I think part of it is like the village building, like connecting with people and just taking that same energy and just bringing that to social. Like for me, that's what it was. It was like connecting with authentic people and trying to stay true to who I am consistently, while ignoring what people wanted me to do. Because people wanted me to be like take more pictures of myself, put myself out more like visually in the world. And I'm like, that's cool, but it's about the words for me, and it's about connecting people and building those connections. And like it's definitely, like, to your point, it's not easier, but it's different. But the accessibility is different, and it's easier. Like I
It's
can
easy.
just tweet somebody, like,
Right.
that's wild.
Right. Right. Us having this conversation virtually is you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's wild, bro. That's wild. It's amazing, but it's different.
Um, I want to get to the point about just going back to to your TED talk.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're being pigeonholed with conversations now about parenting and co-parenting? Do people feel like you're the holy grail of answers now because you opened up this
Yeah.
conversation?
Yeah.
And are you allowing yourself to be pigeonholed? Because I know with just from your tweets and just knowing you, like you're very diverse in thought and you're very unique in thought in some aspects as well.
Thank you, bro.
Um, how has it been since you've done that and you're doing press and podcasts and all that from that point?
It's interesting, man, because I haven't really been pigeonholed with that at all. I think I've honestly been more pigeonholed with the mental health and wellness stuff. Like I've been very outspoken about my own struggles with like suicidal ideations, and like, there, like, I did an insider.com interview where I talked very candidly about the time I called the suicide hotline. And I think 2020, especially 2020, and we talked about this, like 2020 was a very abundant year for me in spite of everything else that was going on. And a lot of that had to do with people asking me to talk about wellness and mental health and my relationship with it, to it, as a black man, as a
Mhm.
cis hetero black man at that, who as one who identifies as such, which I'm more than happy to do. But what I do feel like is it became a thing where, again, which is why I appreciated even you reaching out, because I'm a storyteller first and foremost, and that is a part of my story, but it's not all of my story. And I also think there are a lot of other, especially black women, who can speak to that space very much more definitively than I can. I'm a writer, I'm a rapper, I'm a performer, I'm an artist who also has a journey that coincides with the conversation involving mental health and therapy and self-care and things of that nature. And so for me, it's been trying, like this year, I've actually tried to pivot somewhat from that. It's like I've been saying no to stuff. Like I would love to do this, but I can't because I need to focus on writing my book and I need to focus on potentially making music again and getting back into acting and figuring out what that space looks like for me. But I think that's actually where the pigeonholing came in. Ted didn't do it. I maybe got like 2 or 3 conversations that were really evolving, were centered around parenting. Everything else is really about how do a lot of the conversations I've been having as of late is how do you find your peace in the midst of everything that's happening, which I signed up for, especially last year because I think we needed it. And this year, what I need, I think, what Joel needs is the opportunity to tell more stories in a way that speaks to me as an artist, you know? But yeah, like the pigeonholing came from that. But like the TED actually surprised me. I was surprised about that because I was expecting it. That's what I was concerned about when I first gave the talk, because I thought that everyone was going to ask me to do co-parenting talks or podcasts about parenting, and none of that happened. There was like 2 times where that happened. Other than that, it was gravy train from there.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was expecting like parenting.com and stuff to, but I think it's also different because I'm not a high profile person. I think if a Common or something like that would have given a TED talk, it would have been, I think even with all,
how you gonna pick the only other high yellow black dude?
I know,
with a
man,
bald
that was
head?
the first dude that came, but he's a dad too. That's why I went to the mustache, man. I figured, so I went to the mustache. I went and picked the only dude. I told myself too. I remember I tweeted this, like if Common ever came out with a biopic that I wanted to play Common in the movie. I'm still sticking to that too, man. I'm not
if he
mad
did a
at.
Lifetime Common movie,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
the guy.
Absolutely, man. I mean, we rap, we act like I'm here for it.
You about to do
I'm
the
just
whole
putting it.
Common Sense album? Word.
Yeah. I mean, I know front to back, might as well. Just saying.
Oh man, yo. So you mentioned you touched on it earlier.
Yep.
Your tagline on social media is "I tell stories for Black people."
Yeah.
Can you dive into that a little bit more, because I know you put out 2 books
Yeah.
over the years, which funny enough, I looked on Amazon for your book, and someone's reselling your book on Amazon for like triple the price, dog.
I saw that, which I don't know. I mean, no one is buying it for that much. I don't know why they would do that. But
I was like, yo, is this a hot commodity? Am I missing something? What's
yeah,
going
I mean,
on out here?
you're not. I don't know why they would do. I mean, I saw that and I was like, who do they think I am? Like, no one is buying a
They
Joel
saw the
book.
TED Talk, dog. They saw the TED Talk. They was like,
we can raise the rate on this. I got it. Nah, no, you don't. You still, that's not selling. I mean, maybe one day it'll be worth that. We'll see, man. But me too, bro. Me too. But telling stories to Black people. I tweeted a line that said that maybe a year or so ago, and I just wanted to be clear, and it's and I've gotten a couple of DMs from white folks about it. Some have been very positive, some have been like questionable and negative, and what I've explained to people, it's like, post World War II, the government had to create wheelchair accessible buildings, right? So if I see a wheelchair accessible building, I can enter it and I can use the wheelchair ramp if I want to, even if I don't have a wheelchair. It's not meant for me, but I can use it, and I felt like for me, that's what the storytelling angle was. It's like, I'm writing stories for Black people. Like, anyone can access these stories and it would mean something to them and it will resonate with them. But the intent behind why I do what I do is for the Black community. It's for Black brothers, sisters, trans brothers and sisters, like folks in the trenches who are needing to figure out how best to maneuver through the world. And I've been using my art as a means to help folks do that, because it helped me do that. But my sole priority is black people first, and I landed on that because I think I got to a point where I wanted it to not be a question about why I was showing up in the ways that I was, and knowing that I didn't, us growing up, like, I didn't feel like I had anybody that I could look at who felt accessible to me, that I could like point to and go, oh, that dude is doing what not like what I want to do, but like I could aspire to be that. But it felt like he came from the same mold that I did. Like I didn't grow like I grew up in the backpack era, but I was too young for Lyricist Lounge. You know what I'm saying? So like but I missed the peak tunnel era. You know what I'm saying? And like there are things that I missed that I knew of and I was very much aware of, but they weren't tangible to me. And Hove wasn't tangible, Yassine wasn't tangible, Common wasn't tangible, and so for me, that's why I look forward to the opportunities to go back to the Bronx, speak to the young Black boys and girls in the schools about my process and being creative and making art. And like, yo, you can make art and not have to be a rapper. You could be an actor, you could be a poet, or you could be a rapper, you could be a copywriter, you could work in marketing, you could be a DJ, you can paint, you can do whatever you want to do. You don't have to feel like because of who you are and where you come from, what you look like, that you're limited to how you get to live out your dreams. Like I'm 38, still living my dreams. Like when people ask me if you could do if you could do anything that you wanted and money wasn't an issue, what would you do? I'm like, I would just be doing what I'm doing, but we'd be doing more of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would be doing all the things that I'm doing, having the conversations with people that I care about and fuck with, making art that matters to me, consulting with brands, all the things that I want to do, I'm doing. I just want to get paid a shit ton more money for it. Honestly, that's it. Because I want to be able to funnel that back into the community, feed my family, continue to do the things that speak to me and speak to my truth.
Well, you touched on a key point that, to be honest, in the majority of these interviews I've done so far, inclusion and visibility have come up. Like we don't well, when we were coming up, there wasn't a lot of diversity on television or in our
Yeah.
communities, right?
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
when I was growing up, I had a white doctor, right? But now
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
plethora of Black doctors that I know.
Yeah.
But I only
Yeah.
saw one on
Yeah.
TV though. I only saw one Black doctor on TV. Just
Yeah.
one. He in jail now, but it was just one on TV.
Just one. He's in jail. He is in jail. He's
You know what
in
I'm saying?
jail.
So
Yeah.
but my point goes, just to add to what you're talking about. It's very important for us to see more of us on TV.
Absolutely.
Yo, do you remember when we were kids? I think like Nightline did a special about like kids and dolls, right? Like
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
where,
Well, you
where
might get
it
them
was
locked up.
like
Yeah.
hey, pick up this white doll. Is this white
Mm-hmm.
doll beautiful? And it
Yeah.
acts like a Black kid. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
What about
Yeah.
this black doll? Is it beautiful?
Yeah.
No. Why not?
Yeah.
Because it's dark.
Yeah.
What? Yo,
Yeah. Wild.
yeah.
Wild.
Remember
What?
that?
Yeah, man. And I think this is why for me, like, I'm a girl dad. You know what I'm saying? And so like, my eldest Lila is 5, and I forget what we were talking about, and and I was like, and I asked her, like, do you know why I love you? She's like, because you tell me I'm beautiful, and I'm like, I mean, well, it's more than just that, but yeah, like I made it a point, and granted, I can in that same breath, I can also recognize like my light skin privilege and all that. You know what I'm saying? Like my daughter's like my complexion, but at the end of the day, she is a Black woman. Like people are gonna
Right.
see her as a Black woman. And so for me, it's just important to like I used to love bringing Lila to like I would bring Lila to like certain like speaking engagements that I had because I wanted her to see her father in a way that allowed her to know he could still do that and show up in this way and still be my dad.
Right.
Like, and she may not get it now, and hopefully she'll get it later. But I think part of that is the representation part and how important that is, and how we didn't like you said, Rich, we didn't really have it, and so like we get to be that though for the next generation, I think, which is super dope.
I mean I agree. I'm to be honest, for me, I like some of my friends used to and not to play on this too much, but like some of my friends used to call my family the Huxtables because like pops was in the
Mm,
house, moms was in the house,
yeah, yeah,
moms used to cook up, pops used to work, and we was
yeah,
the Huxtables. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
But like
yeah.
like so I grew up in Queens till I was 9, and I used to get are you guys upper middle class? Are you middle class? Like,
Yeah,
but when I
yeah,
moved to Long Island, I'm in a majority white community, and like it was just, yeah, everybody has both their parents here. What are you talking about?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, of course,
It's
mom and dad
normal.
is in the house. What are
Yeah,
you talking about?
yeah, yeah. It's normal, and I think, what I appreciate about what you're saying too is a balanced perspective. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't, my and part of like the reason I also would talk so much adamantly about mental health. Like my father, my father was a paranoid schizophrenic, is correction. And, you know, uh, dependent on alcohol, a whole bunch of other stuff. And like, so my father really wasn't around. And like, that was the kind of the story that all the little hood boogers on our block shared. Like our dad wasn't present, or if he was present, he was a volatile, abusive member of the household. Um, but I think even through that, you had folks who grew up into something more or bigger or better than that. I think about like, and then on the flip side of that, you also have brothers like yourself who grew up with both parents who were working hard, supporting their family, who also, whether or not, regardless, still a black man, you being Reg growing up in in a world that was in an America, especially that was not designed to offer us security or shelter or freedom, and having to kind of find our way through that. Um, and being able to share all those stories and the layers of those stories, I think is what is has been and was important and still is important for our survival, for sure. You know?
I do. Um, anytime you end with "I know," I'm gonna say I do.
I do know. Exactly.
What something that I you touched on it again already briefly, but I would like to expound upon it. You had a moment where you had to call the suicide hotline. Um,
Yeah.
can we dive into that a little bit?
Yeah.
And where did that come from? And how are you feeling today?
Yeah. I mean, uh, thank you for checking in. Before I get into that story, it's something I try to reinforce with all like the people I care about, which is like asking like, how's your heart? I think sometimes when we're like, how are you? Um, it leaves too much room for folks to not be honest about where they are.
Mm,
But like when you ask a question like, like, how are you feeling now? Like, to me, that speaks to the present moment, which again is something like pulling from, like, I pull from Buddhism. Like, right now I'm great. I'm good. I'm blessed. Like I'm tired and tired more from like, work, parenting, whatever.
right.
Um, but the me calling the suicide hotline, there was so many pressures around that time. I was incredibly stressed, not just at work, but with the co-parenting situation. There was just a lot of heavy, hearty energy that I think was keeping me from showing up as my best version of self. And there was like, I remember us specifically, like we got into like a big argument over the phone, and I felt myself having a panic attack. Like I had to, and the thing is, I had to go pick my daughter up. So we
Mm,
had this big argument. I had to get on the train, and like I'm physically shaking while I'm on the bus, to the point I had to get off the bus. And when I got off the bus, like, so backtracking, when I was on the bus, I tried there's a text line. And that text line, and the reason I was using the text line is because I didn't want to call the suicide hotline on the bus
on the
with a
bus.
lot of
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? That's just be awkward for a lot of people.
yeah.
But I was trying the text line, and it was too slow. Like there was a text bot that was answering. I could tell it was a text bot because I had to wait for responses. And I was like, I don't have time for this. Like I literally want to take my clothes off and run in the street and like
Right.
just end it, because I don't know what to do. But I also knew I couldn't end it because I had to pick up my daughter, and I have a person to live for. And so when I called, it was, I mean, it saved my life. And I think what was so impactful about that is because I know it was a black woman. I didn't ask her if she was a black woman, but
Well,
and
you
I
know.
wish yeah, I wish I could remember sister's name, but she was just so affirming, because I kind of just gave it a breakdown, the rundown of like what exactly I was going through, what I was processing, why everything felt so heavy, and like really it felt like my world was crashing in front of me. I wasn't, I was working at this job, and I was still working in marketing, but I was failing at it, failing miserably, and I wound up getting laid off. Eventually, like
Mm,
maybe like I want to say 3 or 4 months after. But it was just like there was pressure coming from every angle, and I just didn't know what to do. But fortunately, the suicide hotline was available for me to call and do that. And so when I wrote my essay about it, before Insider.com reached out to me to do a video interview, and the essay went viral as well. And it really opened the door, I think, for me. And what I hoped was, and I'm not really sure because I don't, I don't really recall many brothers reaching out to me about it. But what I wanted was for folks to feel like they could be more candid about their struggles, because that's the reason why I share mine, because I want people to live more openly in their truth and not be ashamed of it. And I had some shame surrounding it initially, but I was like, I have to write this, because if I don't write about it, um, it doesn't it doesn't help anybody. And really, that's me honestly carrying from the tradition of rap. Like, if I'm not gonna write a song about it, a song is not gonna be able to capture. I'm writing an essay about it. So like, if Kanye went through something, you was gonna hear it in the record. You know what I'm saying? Like, for me,
Right.
as an essayist, as a writer, as an author, as a poet, it's like, if I've gone through something, I'm gonna have to put it down somewhere so that I need to vent. And essays became my venting process. But the hotline saved my life, for lack of a better phrase.
Um, do you go to therapy?
I used to, and used to meaning like I just ended therapy with my most recent therapist about maybe, I want to say, like 2 months ago.
Right.
I plan on getting re-engaged. So I think I tell people therapy to me is no different than having um than having a personal trainer.
Yeah.
I think it's like it's worth it. It's worth, and like they're going to be able to get into, like, it's one thing to read a book, it's one thing to have friends or therapeutic models, so like a gratitude journal or walking or swimming, things that you do in order to kind of help you get through. But just like a personal trainer, a therapist is really, they're more attuned to, and they're practicing. They've been trained to teach or help you process in this related field. And for me, like, therapy is like, it's a great foundation to have. So like, even if you're, because it's easy to start spinning in your head about what you should do, shouldn't do, what you could have done, regrets, guilt, shame. And I think a lot of us deal with shame and guilt. I know me specifically, and that's a lot of what I was talking through in therapy: guilt and shame around, being chubby as a kid, or having a gap, because like I had a gap when having a gap was not cool. You know what I'm
That's
saying? Like,
right. You're right.
you know what I mean? Like being, like being the kid who used to get made fun of because they said I talked white, and like how that was in relationship to me being with women, and or not being with women, or like all tons of stuff. But a lot of that is still was rooted in shame and guilt about my upbringing and where I came from and what I lacked or whatever. And so therapy gave me the tools. What I tell people is therapy gives you the tools and the language, which I don't think a lot of us had growing up at all.
Yeah, I agree. I think us as men in general, not just black men, but men in
Yeah, yeah, for
general,
sure.
you're taught not to showcase your feelings, right? You're
Hmm.
taught to button them up, suck it up, thug it
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Yo, it was recent too. Someone that's close to me, we were watching something on the news, and this man, specifically a black man, was crying about a situation,
Yeah.
and this person was like, yo, he gotta save that for home for his girl. He shouldn't be crying out in public. I looked, I was like, oh, word? All right,
Say
you
that
gotta
for
go over
girl.
here now.
Putting you in this box.
Yo, you're out of here, dog. You what?
Yeah, man. Like, Reg. Yeah, that to me, that's symptomatic of a bigger problem. Like when we talk about Black liberation and Black freedom, the oppressor is not going to give us any freedom. Like, if the storming of the Capitol has taught us anything, it is there are over, what, 70 million people who voted for Trump.
That's facts.
Trumpism isn't going anywhere. Trumpism existed before Trump existed, right? Like,
He
racism
just
full blown.
he just tapped into it and turned it up.
Yeah, bro. Like, is this thing on? Racism? Are you here? Like, he was ready. He was ready.
Yo,
And,
speaking about a marketing guy, right? That's a
yeah,
marketing guy for your
bruh,
ads.
like first and foremost, and and people bid it hook, line, and sinker. But I think for us, liberation comes from how we talking to each other about each other, how we loving each other, how we showing up for each other, how we treating not just those who have similar viewpoints than us. And like, let's be clear, like misogyny, homophobia, that's not an opinion, right? Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, like, you know I think people should be doing this or whatever. Like, I think the ways that we communicate with each other, the ways that we show up for each other, the ways that we create space for each other, that's what liberation looks like to me. So when I hear a brother say, like, nah, save the crying, imagine if that dude was crying in front of him in a room and he said that to him, that brother who was crying now does not feel like he has a safe space.
Right.
And Like, so now we have to do the work for him, and then we also have to do the work for this brother who's probably creating other environments for other people who do not feel safe. You know what I'm saying? And like, safety is not about physical violence. It's about, can I be vulnerable with you? Because vulnerability is the truth. You know, like, love is the truth. You know what I'm saying? If we're not leaning into love, the opposite of that is not hate, it's fear. And that comes from a place of fear. Like, if I can't cry, I gotta cry in front of my girl. I can't cry in front of my boys. Like, I would love for one of my homies to cry in front of me, because then what that tells me is like, he trusts me enough to feel like this is a safe space for him to come to, where we can chop it up and talk about what does that come from. Because then that keeps us safe, that keeps our children safe, that keeps our women safe. You know what I'm saying? That keeps our queer community safe. You know, like, for me, and this is why, like, the purpose is bigger than music for me. And I think I got to a point where it's like, how do we ensure that our legacies are bigger than the product of what we're trying to create? And for me, that becomes, to your point, like, get the fuck out of here with that, man. Like, if brother gonna cry, let him cry. Like, I'm proud of that man for doing that, because that's, to me, that's strength. It's not about how many girlies you can pull, how big your car is, how big your chain is, how much you got for your deal. It's like, can you sit in the room and be truthful and honest with who you are and who you were and who you're trying to be in a room full of strangers? Like, because to me, that's freedom, that's love, that's strength, that's empowerment, you know?
You just said half a Hove line right there. So let's dive into Hove.
Yes, please. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
um, um, you have I guess is blog the proper term for it?
I mean, blog, column. I like calling it a
Column,
column, just because it makes me
column.
feel like,
I like that, but that sounds,
yeah, yeah,
fancy. Column
yeah. It
sounds
does.
fancy.
Yeah, it do. It do.
Let's go with column. Uh,
It do. It
you have
do.
a column called "What Would Hove Do?" Can you
Yes, sir.
please tell the people about this? Because I love the idea.
Well, first of all, thank you, Reg. It's so I'll like the impetus of this started with the smoking section. The smoking section used to be run. Oh, I think it's still run by John Gotti. Shout out to the homie John Gotti. The smoking section for me was like a really great prominent source for hip hop at the time. I brought this idea to him. He was like, it's cool. And this was like years ago. We're talking like 20, I forget when, like maybe 2016. I sat on it. Medium.com. John Gluck, who's the editor of Creative, reached out to me. I was like, yo, we're doing this new thing. We want you to be a part of it. Do you have any ideas? And I was like, yo, what if we took, like, because if I'm already doing like these wellness self-affirmation conversations. I'm also a hip hop head, hip hop stan, Hove stan especially. Like, and I've always said Jay-Z to me is more like he's more like a motivational speaker than he is just a rapper, And so it became important for me to bring those worlds together. So like, what would it look like to have an advice column where you use Jay-Z lyrics in order to help people get through those problems? And so that's where the brainchild for What Would Hove Do came. And it's been fun, man. It's been fun to have people send their questions, and me kind of respond, and me have to honestly do the source work of which Jay-Z lyric. And I use Google. I ain't gonna lie, like I can't recite every J bar verbatim. Like, but I can,
Yeah,
like, I know Jay-Z has a, for me, I've always felt Jay-Z has a lyric for something, and he does. Like, I think I'm proving it. If I'm being completely transparent, it's I want there to be. I need Hove to see it, and like that's the reason I created it. Like Ain't No Jigga, which I don't know if Ain't No Jigga is Dream Hampton or Lenny S. I feel like it's either one of those two
I think it's one
people.
of the two.
Yeah, I honestly feel like it's one of the two. You know what I'm saying? But they've been supporting the piece, which makes me feel like, yo, I'm like two steps of, like,
You
it's
you are you
somebody
are
that
you are literally one digit away
I
from
like.
Jay.
Reg, I'm confident of this, man. Like, I've been doing my research. I've been following Ain't No Jigga for a while. Like, it's a person who very much knows who Jay-Z is and knows
Right,
Jay-Z is like close with him. So
right.
for me, it's been it's been very rewarding and validating to like get feedback. Like, yo, I love this piece. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, because for me, it's again bringing hip hop with me, and I love the opportunity. And shout out to Jada Gomez, who's the editor. But it's me and my voice, which is what I'm most excited about. And not to say my other work isn't in my voice, but it's very much Joel on the block, having a conversation with some folks, like using hip hop vernacular in a way that I would speak and that showing up. It's not poetic. It's very much these are my thoughts, and using Jay-Z to help siphon those thoughts and share them with the world. It's been dope. It's been fun, man.
Oh man. I just thought it was so cool. I was like, yo, this is something that should be a book. Speaking of books, I know I know you have a goal of getting like a Simon and Schuster type book deals
Yeah,
going
yeah,
on.
yeah.
Do you have something in the works that is coming that we can talk about?
I mean, kind of. I mean, like so right now I'm signed to Folio Literary, which is the literary agency that's helping to, I mean, essentially help me craft my manuscript that will then become the proposal that will be sent to the Simon and Schusters of the world, to the Penguin Random Houses of the world. Um, I we've been playing with titles. We don't haven't really landed on one yet. I feel like I know what the title should be. I'm not going to disclose that yet. But
Yeah,
essentially,
yeah, yeah.
the essay collection is really just a body of work of mine that I think encapsulates the experience of a young Black kid from the Bronx growing up. And I what I'm looking forward to is because I don't think there's anything else like this in the market. Like I'm writing essays about my belly, like my body, and like really it's about body shape and body image, and how I don't think Black men generally get the opportunity to talk about that.
Okay.
And to be fair, straight Black men. And I think part of what I've been trying to do is create a narrative that centers our experience in a way that's not harmful to other communities. Because I think a lot of what unfortunately happens in this space from cis hetero Black men is like uh, uh, an attack on other spaces. And my goal is to make it more inclusive for everybody. But sharing my experience as a kid growing up in the Bronx on Creston Ave, like from the hood, like and speaking in a way that I think is going to be um, communicated truthfully to our peers. I mean, really, the goal for me is to write something maybe, hopefully, just as good as Toni Morrison. I don't think I'll ever get there, but that's for me. That's the goal. Um, but we'll hopefully that'll be in a bookstore near you and everybody sometime in like 2022. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, that's the work, right? That's the work
Yeah,
we got to put in.
yeah, man.
Um,
Yeah,
Something else that you mentioned briefly, and that I'd love to dive in a little bit more deeper into. You mentioned Buddhism and
yeah,
your involvement in it. I don't hear a lot of Black men say Buddhism.
yeah,
How did you end up there? And what does it do for you?
yeah. Well, again, great question, Reg. While she's not a Buddhist, I think my journey to a greater sense of self started with Ayana Van Zant. She had written a book for it was dedicated to Black men. Granted, there was some language in there that's very dated, I think, but it was the first time I read someone speak to Black men in that way. And like she was using words like surrender, your ego, and shit like that. And that led me to Eckhart Tolle and The Power of Now, which then led me to Gary Zukav's Seat of the Soul. And I'd actually gotten that recommendation from like Oprah's book club because Jay-Z had mentioned it to her, I
Ah,
think. Yeah,
aha.
you know? Um, but then I think that started me on this journey of self and mindfulness, and that led me to listening to Dharma, like a lot of Dharma talks. And Dharma really, the energy that's centered around Buddhism, it led me to like listen to like different podcasts. And I wouldn't consider myself a practicing Buddhist by any stretch of the imagination, but when I look at people like in a Sharon Salzberg or a Tara Brach, individuals who are very much known in that mindfulness Buddhist space. Sharon Salzberg, who I had the pleasure and opportunity to be on a podcast with and also be mentioned in her book for an interview. Like we're looking at individuals who I think are talking about how can we be more present. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want to feel like I was struggling with my demons. And I think what I loved about Buddhism, what I do love about Buddhism is the practice that doesn't alienate you from if I wanted to call myself a Christian or a Muslim or whatever the case was, like I could still do that while being a practicer of this, being a practicer of Buddhism. It's given me solace. It's given me something to go to um, when I'm not really sure about what my next step should be. And for me, and what's been interesting is that I think it it's allowed me to show up in spaces in the ways that I do now. You know, like it's helped me communicate better. It's helped me to listen better. Um, and I think it's helped me to feel more free without feeling restricted by, um, a religion. I think is what I've appreciated the most because I'm very much a spiritual person. Buddhism kind of gave me a foundation to practice with and from, I think.
I got it. How long have you been practicing?
I want to. I mean, I want to say in 2029. I want to say about 7 to 8 years. And so and I have yet to actually go on like a retreat, but I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, maybe not this year, but maybe next year. A Buddhist retreat where you kind of you leave your phone at the door. It's hard because a lot of it is like being with stillness, being quiet, and really being with things, which I think 2020 did a lot for us, right? Like we all had to kind of settle down, slow down. And I think that's also something Buddhism gave to me, that the ability to slow down and give myself permission to do that. Like when people will complain about New York and about how fast New York is, which to be fair, New York is like, well, not as fast anymore because of COVID, but
All right.
you know what I'm saying? But New York, like everything has to happen now and you have to hustle. And I'm like, you don't have to, you can. And sometimes you should. Like New York gave me that hustle mentality, but it's a choice. Everything is a choice to a certain extent, unless of course you're suffering from some sort of mental health condition that doesn't allow you to do so. But Buddhism has always been a reminder to me that I get to choose how I show up in these spaces. And so New York could be as busy as it wants to be. I could put my AirPods in, or I can just walk, and I can do some walking meditation, and I can like not be ignorant of what's happening around me, but be cognizant of it while not letting it affect how I show up in the world. And I think that's probably the biggest thing I got from Buddhism is like the outside circumstances don't need to affect who I am or how I show up. So when I see people who are reacting to a situation, reacting to triggers, and again, that is a human trait of ours to do so. Buddhism gives me the opportunity to pause, right, and say, okay, how can I respond to this moment with intention, with kindness, with awareness, and in a way that's honest and true to who I am and where I am in this present moment.
Well, brother, we've been chatting for over an hour. I don't want to hold you for too much more of your time. But we had to catch up. It's been a while.
Yeah, man. This has been beautiful, man.
Can you tell the people where they can find you and be so they can be 50,000.4 of your followers on social media?
Yeah, I mean, man, I'm on Instagram. I am Joel Leon. I'm on Twitter at Joel, aka Mag, MAG. Like if you just Google Joel Leon, I'm like the first person that comes up. That's also something, a goal of mine I used to have. Like I wanted my SEO search engine game to be strong.
Or
and right
first
now
person.
it's like, yeah, so like, search Joel Leon on Google. Like the first person that comes up, you can just click on it.
Well,
But yeah,
Joel,
man.
yo, man, I appreciate the time, man.
Same, bro. Same.
This has been an enlightening interview. Hopefully, people picked up a few gems.
Hopefully,
My
man.
guy, this is Wave Files, and of course, I am Reg West. Salute.